The phone rang at 2:47 a.m., shattering the silence of the small townhouse in Arlington, Virginia. Dr. Michael Chen's eyes snapped open, his hand instinctively reaching for the device on his nightstand. 12 years as a trauma surgeon had trained his body to wake instantly, his mind to shift from sleep to full alertness in seconds. The screen glowed in the darkness. Richmond Memorial Hospital, emergency. He answered before the second ring. Dr. Chen. Michael, it's Sarah. Dr. Sarah Mitchell's voice was tight, controlled, but he could hear the urgency underneath. She was the chief of emergency medicine at Richmond Memorial, a woman who'd seen everything in her 30-year career. If she was calling him at 2:47 a.m., it wasn't a routine case. Talk to me, Michael said, already swinging his legs out of bed. GSW to the chest, 14-year-old female. Wrong place, wrong time, convenience store robbery gone bad. The bullet entered just below the left clavicle. We've got her stable, but barely. CT shows the projectile is lodged near the superior vena cava, possibly touching the phrenic nerve. We need a level 1 trauma surgeon, and you're the only one within 50 miles who's done this kind of extraction. Michael was already moving, pulling on the scrubs he kept laid out for exactly these moments. Vitals? BP 90/60 and dropping. Heart rate 120. She's compensating, but she won't last long. We've got her typed and crossed, 4 units standing by, but Michael... Sarah's voice cracked slightly. She's a kid. Freshman in high school. Her whole life ahead of her. I'm 40 minutes out, maybe 35 if the roads are clear. Keep her stable. I'm on my way. Drive safe, Michael. We need you in one piece. He grabbed his keys, his medical bag, and his hospital ID badge, clipping it to his collar. As he rushed to his car, his mind was already in the OR, visualizing the procedure, running through the steps, anticipating complications. A bullet near the superior vena cava was a nightmare scenario. One wrong move, one slip of the scalpel, and the girl would bleed out before they could even attempt to save her. His black Mercedes sedan roared to life. He programmed the hospital into his GPS. Richmond Memorial was 38 miles away, most of it highway. At 3 a.m., traffic would be non-existent. He could make it in 30 minutes if he pushed it. He pulled out of his driveway and headed toward Interstate 95, his hands steady on the wheel, his breathing controlled. In the Army, they'd taught him to manage stress through controlled breathing. In combat zones in Iraq and Afghanistan, he'd performed surgeries under mortar fire, his hands steady even as the world exploded around him. This was just another mission. But as he merged onto the empty highway, pressing the accelerator down, he couldn't shake the image Sarah had painted. A 14-year-old girl, bleeding out, her parents in the waiting room, praying for a miracle. He would be that miracle. He had to be. The speedometer read 78 miles per hour. Michael knew he was over the limit. The signs clearly marked 65, but every second counted. The highway stretched out before him, empty and dark, the broken white lines blurring past like a heartbeat. His phone, mounted on the dashboard, buzzed with another message from the hospital. Patient's BP dropping, 85/55 tachycardic. ETA? He typed back quickly at a red light. 25 minutes. The response came immediately. Hurry! Michael pressed harder on the accelerator. 80 miles per hour. 82. The Mercedes handled beautifully, its German engineering making the speed feel effortless. He kept his eyes on the road, scanning for any other vehicles, but the highway was a ghost town. Then, in his rearview mirror, he saw them. Blue and red lights, flashing in the darkness like a predator's eyes. No, he whispered. Not now. He glanced at the speedometer again. 78. He'd been speeding, yes, but this was an emergency. Surely the officer would understand. Surely they'd let him go with a warning, maybe even escort him to the hospital. He slowed down, signaling, and pulled onto the shoulder. The gravel crunched under his tires as he came to a stop. He rolled down his window, letting the cold November air rush in, and placed both hands on the steering wheel at 10 and 2, fingers spread wide and visible. This was the routine he'd learned as a black man in America. Hands visible, no sudden movements. Be polite. Be respectful. Survive the encounter. In the side mirror, he watched the officer approach. The man was tall, maybe 6 feet 2 inches, with a thick neck and a buzz cut that was trying too hard to look military, but lacked the discipline. His uniform was tight around the gut, the buttons straining slightly. His hand rested on the butt of his service weapon, a casual gesture that was anything but casual. The officer's nameplate read, G. Stone. "License and registration," Officer Stone barked, not even waiting to reach the window. His voice was harsh, authoritative, and carried the kind of contempt that made Michael's skin prickle. "Good evening, officer," Michael said, keeping his voice calm and professional. "I'm Dr. Michael Chen. I'm a trauma surgeon at Richmond Memorial Hospital, and I'm responding to a critical emergency. A 14-year-old girl has been shot, and I'm the on-call surgeon. I was speeding, and I apologize for that, but I need to get to the hospital immediately. Every second counts." Stone's flashlight beam moved to Michael's face, blinding him momentarily. The light lingered, studying him, assessing him. Michael could feel the judgment in that gaze, the assumptions being made. "I didn't ask for your life story, boy," Stone said, the word boy landing like a slap. "I asked for your license and registration." Michael felt the familiar sting of racism, the casual dehumanization wrapped in a single word. He'd heard it before, too many times, but it never stopped hurting. He took a breath, pushing down the anger, focusing on the mission. Get to the hospital, save the girl. "Of course, officer," Michael said, his voice steady. "I'm reaching for my wallet now. It's in my jacket pocket." "Make it quick," Stone snapped. "I don't have all night." Michael slowly reached into his jacket, narrating every movement. "I'm pulling out my wallet now. My license is inside and the registration is in the glove compartment." He retrieved his driver's license, a Florida license, since he'd moved from Miami 2 years ago and hadn't updated it yet, and handed it through the window. Stone snatched it without looking at Michael's face, examining it under his flashlight. "Dr. Michael Chen," Stone read aloud, his tone mocking. "Florida license. Long way from home. What are you really doing out here at 3 a.m., doctor? This car looks expensive. Looks stolen to me." Michael's jaw tightened. "Officer, I can assure you this car is registered in my name. The registration is in the glove compartment. And as I said, I'm a trauma surgeon. I'm responding to an emergency." Yeah, Stone said dismissively. "Everyone's got a sob story. Let me see that registration." Michael opened the glove compartment, pulling out the vehicle registration and his insurance card. He handed them over, along with his hospital ID badge, which clearly displayed his name, photo, and title. Dr. Michael Chen, MD, FACS, Trauma Surgery. Stone barely glanced at the ID. "This could be fake. You people are always running scams." "You people?" Michael repeated, the anger creeping into his voice despite his best efforts. "Officer, I'm a licensed physician. You can verify everything I'm telling you with a single phone call to the hospital." Stone leaned down, his face inches from the window, his breath reeking of stale coffee and chewing tobacco. "I don't like your tone, boy. You getting smart with me?" Michael forced himself to stay calm. "No, sir. I'm simply asking you to let me do my job. A child is dying." "That's not my problem," Stone said, straightening up. "Step out of the vehicle. I'm going to search you and this car. I think you're trafficking drugs." Michael's phone buzzed on the dashboard mount. A text from Sarah. "Patient coding. Where are you?" His heart sank. She was coding. The girl was dying, and he was stuck on the side of the road being harassed by a racist cop. "Officer Stone," Michael said, reading the nameplate again. "Please, I'm begging you, just call the hospital. Ask for Dr. Sarah Mitchell, the ER chief. She'll confirm everything. But please let me go. This girl doesn't have time." Stone's hand moved to his baton. "I said get out of the car. Now, or I'll drag you out." Michael looked at the phone, at the message, at the time. 3:02 a.m. He'd already wasted precious minutes. If he refused, if he escalated this, it would take even longer, and the girl would die. He unbuckled his seatbelt, his hands shaking with suppressed rage and frustration. "I'm stepping out now." "Hands where I can see them," Stone ordered. Michael opened the door and stepped out onto the gravel shoulder, the cold air biting through his thin scrubs. He raised his hands, showing them empty, and turned slowly to face Stone. "Hands on the hood. Spread your legs." Michael complied, pressing his palms against the cold metal of the Mercedes. He felt Stone's hands on him immediately, rough and invasive, patting him down with unnecessary aggression. Stone's fingers dug into his ribs, his pockets, his waistband, searching for something, anything, to justify this stop. "What's this?" Stone grabbed Michael's phone from his scrubs pocket, holding it up like he'd found contraband. "That's my phone. I need it to coordinate with the hospital." "You'll get it back if you're clean," Stone interrupted, scrolling through the device. The screen lit up with notifications, missed calls from the hospital, text messages, emergency alerts. Stone's eyes scanned them briefly, then he tossed the phone onto the hood of the car just out of Michael's reach. "Richmond Memorial, emergency alerts, doesn't prove anything. You could have stolen this phone." Michael closed his eyes, forcing himself to breathe. In for 4, hold for 4, out for 4. A technique he'd learned in the Army when dealing with impossible situations. Stay calm, stay in control. Don't give them a reason. "Officer Stone," Michael said, his voice low and controlled, "I am asking you, one more time, to please call the hospital. Ask for Dr. Sarah Mitchell. She will confirm everything I've told you. But please, I'm begging you, let me go. A 14-year-old girl is dying, and I'm the only surgeon who can save her." Stone ignored him, walking around to the trunk of the Mercedes. "Pop the trunk." "Officer, pop the trunk." Michael reached through the open driver's door and pressed the trunk release. Stone opened it, rummaging through the contents. Michael kept a full medical kit in his trunk. Trauma supplies, emergency equipment, everything he might need if he encountered an accident on the road. Stone pulled out the medical bag, unzipping it and dumping the contents onto the ground. Surgical instruments clattered onto the gravel, scalpels, hemostats, clamps, suture kits. Tools that had saved dozens of lives now lay scattered like evidence at a crime scene. "What the hell is all this?" Stone demanded, holding up a scalpel. "These are weapons. You planning to hurt someone with these?" "Those are surgical instruments," Michael said, his voice tight with frustration. "I use them to save lives." "Or to commit crimes," Stone said, grinning. He was enjoying this. Michael could see it in his eyes, the satisfaction of having power, of making someone squirm. "I'm placing you under arrest for possession of illegal weapons, reckless driving, and suspicion of vehicle theft." "You can't be serious," Michael said, disbelief flooding through him. "Oh, I'm dead serious." Stone grabbed Michael's wrist, wrenching it behind his back with enough force to make Michael gasp. The handcuffs clicked into place, biting into his skin. "You have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law." As Stone recited the Miranda rights, Michael's phone, still on the hood, buzzed again. Another text. "Patient BP 80/50. Critical. Need Chen now." "Officer, please!" Michael's voice cracked, the desperation finally breaking through his calm facade. "A child is dying. You can arrest me after. You can charge me with whatever you want, but please let me save her first." Stone shoved him toward the police cruiser, his hand rough on Michael's neck. Should have thought about that before you decided to speed and carry weapons, boy. Michael stumbled, the handcuffs digging into his wrists as Stone pushed him into the back seat of the cruiser. The door slammed shut with a finality that made his stomach drop. Through the cage separating the front and back seats, Michael watched as Stone returned to the Mercedes, taking his time as he collected the surgical instruments, tossing them carelessly back into the bag. He grabbed Michael's phone, scrolling through it again, then pocketed it. Stone got into the driver's seat, adjusting the rearview mirror so he could see Michael. "Comfortable back there, Doctor?" Michael didn't respond. He was staring at the clock on the cruiser's dashboard. 3:14 a.m. 17 minutes wasted. 17 minutes that girl didn't have. Stone picked up his radio. "Dispatch, this is Unit 47. I've got a 10 to 15 en route to booking. Male, black, late 30s, driving a stolen vehicle, possession of weapons. Request backup at the station for processing. 10-4, Unit 47, backup en route." Michael leaned his head back against the seat, closing his eyes. He thought about the girl on the operating table, her heart struggling to keep beating, her blood pressure dropping, her body shutting down. He thought about her parents in the waiting room, watching the clock, wondering why the surgeon hadn't arrived yet. He thought about all the years of training, all the lives he'd saved, all the oaths he'd taken. And he thought about how none of it mattered to the man in the front seat. To Officer Garrett Stone, Michael wasn't a doctor. He wasn't a veteran. He wasn't a human being with a mission to save a life. He was just another black man who needed to be put in his place. The Virginia State Police Barracks in Henrico County was a squat brick building that looked like it had been built in the 1970s and never updated. Stone pulled the cruiser into the Sally Port, a secure garage where prisoners were transferred from vehicles to holding cells, and killed the engine. Michael sat in the back seat, his mind racing through the variables. He was under arrest, illegally, for charges that wouldn't stand up in any legitimate court. But that didn't matter right now. What mattered was time. Every minute he spent in this building was a minute that girl's heart struggled to keep beating. Stone opened the back door, grabbing Michael's arm and pulling him out roughly. "Let's go, Doctor. Time to process you." They entered through a heavy steel door into a hallway that smelled of industrial cleaner and stale coffee. The fluorescent lights overhead flickered, casting harsh shadows on the beige walls. Michael was led to a booking desk where a sergeant sat, looking bored and half asleep. The sergeant's nameplate read Davies. He was in his 50s, with a gut that suggested too many years behind a desk and not enough in the field. He looked up as Stone approached, his eyes immediately going to Michael. "What do we got, Stone?" Davies asked, his tone suggesting this was routine. "Traffic stop turned into a weapons possession. Found a bunch of knives and blades in his car. Plus, the car might be stolen. Registration looked sketchy." Michael's jaw clenched. "The knives and blades are surgical instruments. I'm a doctor." Davies looked at him, then at Stone, then back at Michael. "A doctor, huh? Let me guess. You were speeding because you had an emergency?" "Yes," Michael said, leaning forward despite the handcuffs. "A 14-year-old girl was shot. She's at Richmond Memorial Hospital, and I'm the trauma surgeon on call. She's dying right now because this officer," he gestured with his cuffed hands toward Stone, "decided to arrest me instead of verifying my credentials." Davies sighed, pulling out a clipboard. "Everyone's got a story, pal. Name? Dr. Michael Chen, C-H-E-N. Date of birth? March 15th, 1990. Address?" Michael rattled off his Arlington address, his mind calculating the time. It was 3:28 a.m. now, 41 minutes since Sarah's call. The girl had been coding when Sarah texted. How long could they keep her alive without him? Davies typed slowly, pecking at the keyboard with 2 fingers. Michael wanted to scream at him to hurry, but he knew it would only make things worse. "Says here you've got a Florida license. Why are you in Virginia?" "I moved here 2 years ago for work. I haven't updated my license yet." "That's a violation. Davies said, making a note. "Sergeant, please," Michael said, his voice controlled but urgent. "You can charge me with whatever you want later, but right now, I need to make a phone call. I need to contact the hospital and let them know I've been detained. They're waiting for me to perform surgery." Davies looked at Stone. "He get his phone call?" "Not yet," Stone said. "Figured we'd process him first." "I want my phone call," Michael insisted. "That's my right." Davies shrugged. "Phone system's down. Budget cuts. You'll get your call in the morning." Michael stared at him, disbelief washing over him. "The phone system is down? Are you serious?" "Do I look like I'm joking?" Davies said, his tone flat. Michael's hands clenched into fists behind his back. This was the game. Delay, obstruct. Make it as difficult as possible. He'd read about it, heard stories from other black professionals who'd been targeted by police. But experiencing it firsthand was a different kind of nightmare. "Sergeant Davies," Michael said, his voice low and dangerous. "If that girl dies because you refuse to let me make a phone call, I will make sure everyone knows. The hospital, the media, the state medical board, everyone will know that you and Officer Stone killed a child because of your racism." Davies' face hardened. "You threatening me?" "No, I'm making you a promise." Stone stepped forward, his hand going to his baton. "Watch your mouth, boy, or we'll add resisting arrest to your charges." "I haven't resisted anything," Michael said, his eyes locked on Stone's. "But you already knew that, didn't you? You knew I was telling the truth. You knew I was a doctor. You just didn't care." Stone's face reddened. "Empty his pockets. Strip search. I think he's hiding drugs." Michael's blood ran cold. A strip search was the ultimate humiliation, the final assertion of power, and it would take even more time. "Is that really necessary?" Davies asked, sounding almost bored. He was acting suspicious, Stone insisted. "Nervous, sweating, classic signs." "I was nervous because a child is dying and you're wasting my time," Michael shouted, his composure finally cracking. "There it is," Stone said, grinning. "Aggressive behavior, threatening an officer. Davies, log that." Davies sighed, making another note. "Take him to holding. We'll process him fully in the morning." "Morning?" Michael's voice rose. "It's 3:30 a.m. Morning is hours away. I need to make a phone call now." "And I told you, the phones are down," Davies repeated. "Take him back, Stone." Stone grabbed Michael's arm, dragging him down the hallway toward the holding cells. Michael stumbled, his mind reeling. This couldn't be happening. This couldn't be real. They reached the holding area, a row of 6 cells, all empty except for one occupied by a drunk man sleeping off a bender. Stone unlocked one of the cells and shoved Michael inside. "Get comfortable, Doctor," Stone said, his voice dripping with sarcasm. "You're going to be here a while." The door slammed shut with a metallic clang that echoed through the hallway. Michael stood in the center of the cell, still handcuffed, his mind racing. He had to get out. He had to get to the hospital. That girl, Emma, Sarah had said her name was Emma. Emma was dying, and he was the only one who could save her. But first, he had to save himself. The holding cell was 8 feet by 10 feet, with a metal bench bolted to the wall, a stainless steel toilet in the corner, and nothing else. The walls were cinder block, painted a dingy beige that had probably once been white. The fluorescent light overhead buzzed and flickered, casting harsh shadows. Michael sat on the bench, his hands still cuffed behind his back, his shoulders screaming from the unnatural position. He'd been here for 20 minutes, and no one had come to remove the cuffs. He closed his eyes, forcing himself to breathe through the pain, and let his mind wander to the OR. He visualized the girl, Emma, on the table. He imagined the monitors beeping, the steady rhythm of the ventilator, the controlled chaos of the surgical team working to keep her alive. He visualized his hands, gloved and steady, holding the scalpel. He saw himself making the incision, the layers of tissue parting under his blade. He saw the bullet, lodged against the superior vena cava, and he planned his approach. Gentle traction, careful dissection, hemostats ready in case of bleeding. In his mind, he saved her. In reality, she was probably already dead. The thought made him nauseous. He opened his eyes, staring at the ceiling, fighting back the wave of despair that threatened to drown him. 12 years. 12 years of medical school, residency, fellowship. 12 years of sleepless nights, impossible hours, life and death decisions. 12 years of saving lives, of being the last hope for people who had run out of hope. And now, because of one racist cop with a badge and a fragile ego, it might all be for nothing. Before the door at the end of the hallway clanged open. Michael looked up, hope flaring briefly, but it was just Stone, carrying a cup of coffee and looking entirely too pleased with himself. Stone walked to the cell, leaning against the bars and sipping his coffee slowly. "Comfortable, Doctor?" Michael didn't respond. "I ran your name," Stone continued, his tone conversational. "You know what I found? You're legit. Richmond Memorial confirmed it. Dr. Michael Chen, trauma surgeon, decorated Army vet, all that. Pretty impressive resume." Michael's eyes narrowed. "So you know I was telling the truth." "Oh, I knew that from the start," Stone said, grinning. "I saw your hospital ID. I saw the medical equipment. I'm not an idiot." "Then why?" "Because I could," Stone interrupted, his grin widening. "Because you were speeding in my jurisdiction, and I don't like your kind thinking you can break the law just because you've got a fancy degree. You people need to learn respect." Michael stood up slowly, his entire body trembling with rage. "You knew a child was dying and you arrested me anyway." "That's not my problem," Stone said, shrugging. "Maybe if you'd been more respectful, more cooperative, I would have let you go with a warning. But you had an attitude. You got smart with me. And now here you are." Michael took a step closer to the bars, his voice dropping to a whisper. "Officer Stone, I'm going to give you one chance. One. Take off these handcuffs, let me out of this cell, and I'll forget this ever happened. I'll go save that girl, and you can go back to your miserable life. But if you don't, if I don't, what?" Stone laughed. "You'll sue me? You'll file a complaint? Go ahead. I've got 7 complaints in my file already, and I'm still here. You know why? Because this is my town, my department. And guys like you don't scare me." Michael's jaw clenched. "You should be scared." "Of you?" Stone leaned closer, his breath fogging the bars. "You're handcuffed in a cell, boy. What are you going to do?" Michael met his eyes, his voice cold and steady. "And when I get out of here, and I will, I'm going to make sure you never wear that badge again. That's not a threat. That's a guarantee." Stone's grin faltered slightly. There was something in Michael's eyes, a certainty, a promise, that unsettled him. But he pushed it down, laughing nervously. "Big talk from a guy in handcuffs," Stone muttered, turning away. As he walked back down the hallway, his radio crackled. "Stone, you copy?" The front desk of the Virginia State Police Barracks looked like a war zone. Dr. Sarah Mitchell, all 5 feet 2 inches of her, was standing in front of Sergeant Davies' desk, her hands on her hips, her voice rising to a volume that could shatter glass. "Where is my surgeon?" Sarah slammed her hand on the desk, making Davies jump. "You have kidnapped a doctor responding to a critical emergency. Do you understand the legal ramifications of that? Do you understand that a child is dying because of your incompetence?" Standing beside her, calm but radiating authority, was Lieutenant Colonel James Porter. He was in his early 50s, with close-cropped gray hair and a chest full of ribbons and medals that told the story of a long and distinguished military career. He wasn't here officially. He was retired from active duty. But he was here as Michael's friend. They'd served together in Iraq, in the worst days of the war, and James owed Michael his life several times over. "Ma'am, I'm sure this is just a misunderstanding," Davies stammered, his earlier boredom replaced by genuine nervousness. He wasn't used to civilians pushing back, especially not civilians who looked like they knew exactly what they were doing. "Misunderstanding?" Sarah's eyes blazed. "Your officer pulled over Dr. Chen, a decorated combat veteran and one of the best trauma surgeons on the East Coast, and arrested him." The front desk of the Virginia State Police Barracks looked like a war zone. Dr. Sarah Mitchell, all 5 feet 2 inches of her, was standing in front of Sergeant Davies's desk, her hands on her hips, her voice rising to a volume that could shatter glass. "Where is my surgeon?" Sarah slammed her hand on the desk, making Davies jump. "You have kidnapped a doctor responding to a critical emergency. Do you understand the legal ramifications of that? Do you understand that a child is dying because of your incompetence?" Standing beside her, calm but radiating authority, was Lieutenant Colonel James Porter. He was in his early 50s, with close-cropped gray hair and a chest full of ribbons and medals that told the story of a long and distinguished military career. He wasn't here officially, he was retired from active duty, but he was here as Michael's friend. They'd served together in Iraq, in the worst days of the war, and James owed Michael his life several times over. "Ma'am, I'm sure this is just a misunderstanding," Davies stammered, his earlier boredom replaced by genuine nervousness. He wasn't used to civilians pushing back, especially not civilians who looked like they knew exactly what they were doing. "Misunderstanding?" Sarah's eyes blazed. "Your officer pulled over Dr. Chen, a decorated combat veteran and one of the best trauma surgeons on the East Coast, and arrested him. He was responding to a medical emergency, you absolute moron!" Sarah pulled out her phone, shoving the screen in Stone's face. "This is Emma Stone, 14 years old, gunshot wound to the chest. She's been coding on and off for the past hour because the only surgeon qualified to operate on her is sitting in your jail cell." Stone's face went white as he stared at the photo on Sarah's screen. It was a girl, blonde hair, bright blue eyes, wearing a volleyball uniform and smiling at the camera. "Emma," Stone whispered, his voice barely audible. That's my daughter." The room fell silent. Even the drunk in the holding cell down the hallway seemed to stop snoring. "What?" Stone's voice cracked. "Emma was shot? When? Where?" "2 hours ago," Sarah said, her voice like ice. "Convenience store robbery. Wrong place, wrong time. She's at Richmond Memorial Hospital right now fighting for her life. And the man you arrested, Dr. Michael Chen, is the only surgeon in this state qualified to perform the kind of surgery she needs. She needs a bullet extracted from near her heart, and if it's not done in the next hour, she's going to die." Stone staggered backward, gripping the desk for support. His face had gone from white to gray and his hands were shaking. No, Emma, oh God, Emma!" "Your wife called the hospital 2 hours ago," Sarah continued, her voice relentless. "She's in the waiting room right now, terrified, praying for a miracle. And that miracle was supposed to be Dr. Chen, but you—" She jabbed a finger into Stone's chest. "You arrested him. You humiliated him. You called him boy. You denied him his phone call. And now your daughter is dying because of your racism." Stone's legs gave out. He collapsed into a chair, his face buried in his hands, his entire body shaking with sobs. "I didn't know. I swear to God, I didn't know." "You didn't ask," James said coldly, stepping forward. "You saw a black man in an expensive car and made assumptions. You profiled him. You humiliated him, and now your daughter is paying the price for your prejudice." Stone looked up, tears streaming down his face. Please, I'll let him go. I'll drop all the charges. I'll do anything, just save my daughter, please." Sarah crossed her arms.
"Where is he?" "Cell 4, back hallway." Stone fumbled for his keys, his hands shaking so badly he dropped them twice. "I'll get him. I'll bring him right now." "No," James said firmly. "You stay here. Sergeant Davies will bring him."
Davies nodded quickly, grabbing a set of keys and hurrying down the hallway. A minute later, he returned with Michael, finally free of the handcuffs, rubbing his wrists where the metal had cut into his skin. Michael stepped into the front area, his eyes immediately finding Sarah and James. Relief washed over his face, followed quickly by grim determination. "Dr. Chen," Sarah said, her voice softening. "Are you hurt?" "I'm fine," Michael said, though his wrists were red and raw. "How's the patient?" "Critical. We've got her stabilized, but barely. You need to get there now." Michael turned to Stone, who was still sitting in the chair, his face buried in his hands. For a moment, Michael just stared at him, his expression unreadable. "Officer Stone," Michael said quietly. Stone looked up, his eyes red and swollen. "Dr. Chen, I'm so sorry. I didn't know it was my daughter. I swear I didn't—" "It shouldn't have mattered," Michael interrupted, his voice cold. "It shouldn't matter whose daughter she is. You took an oath to serve and protect. You violated that oath tonight. You profiled me. You humiliated me. You delayed critical medical care because of your prejudice." Stone's face crumpled. Please, just save her. I'll do anything. I'll resign. I'll face whatever charges you want. Just please save my daughter." Michael looked at him for a long moment, then turned to Sarah. "Where are my keys?" Stone fumbled in his pocket, pulling out Michael's car keys, phone, and wallet. He held them out with shaking hands. "Here, take them. I'll escort you. Lights and sirens. I'll clear the road." "No," Michael said firmly, taking his belongings. "You stay here. You think about what you did. And when your daughter wakes up, and she will wake up, you're going to have a conversation with her about how you almost cost her her life because of your racism." Stone opened his mouth to protest, but James put a hand on his shoulder, squeezing hard. "You heard the doctor. Sit down. Shut up." Michael turned to Sarah and James. "Let's go." They rushed out of the station into the cold pre-dawn air. Michael's Mercedes was still parked in the sally port, the surgical instruments scattered on the ground where Stone had dumped them. Michael quickly gathered them, shoving them back into his bag, not bothering to organize them. There would be time for that later. "I'll drive," James said, holding out his hand for the keys. "You prep mentally. Sarah, you ride with us and update him on the patient's status." They piled into the Mercedes, James behind the wheel, Michael in the passenger seat, and Sarah in the back. James peeled out of the parking lot, the tires squealing as he accelerated onto the highway. Onto the highway. "Talk to me, Sarah," Michael said, his mind already shifting into surgical mode. 14-year-old female, Emma Stone. GSW to the left chest, entry wound just below the clavicle. No exit wound. CT shows the bullet lodged near the superior vena cava, possibly impinging on the phrenic nerve. She's been in and out of VFib for the past hour. We've shocked her 4 times. We've got her on pressors, but her BP keeps dropping. She's maxed out on norepinephrine. Blood loss is significant. We've transfused 6 units so far. Michael's jaw tightened. 6 units. She's a child. That's almost her entire blood volume. "I know," Sarah said quietly. "We're running out of options, Michael. If you don't get that bullet out in the next hour, we're going to lose her." "I won't let that happen," Michael said, his voice hard with determination. James glanced at him. "You ready for this, Mike?" Michael nodded. "I've done worse under worse conditions. Remember Fallujah? That Marine with the shrapnel in his aorta?" "I remember," James said, his voice tight. "You saved his life with a penknife and a prayer. This is the same thing, just with better tools and a better operating room." They drove in silence for a moment, the speedometer climbing past 90. James had his military ID ready in case they got pulled over, but the highway was empty. "Mike," James said quietly, "you know you didn't have to do this, right? After what Stone did to you, no one would blame you if you walked away." Michael looked at him, his expression fierce. "She's a child, James. She didn't choose her father. She doesn't deserve to die because he's a racist piece of shit." "I know, but..." "No buts," Michael interrupted. "This is what I do. I save lives. Every life. No matter who they are or where they come from. That's the oath I took. That's the man I am." Sarah leaned forward from the back seat, putting a hand on Michael's shoulder. "You're a good man, Michael Chen. The best I've ever known." Michael didn't respond, but he reached up and squeezed her hand briefly. They roared into the hospital parking lot at 4:47 a.m., exactly 2 hours after Sarah's initial call. Michael was out of the car before it fully stopped, sprinting toward the ER entrance, his medical bag bouncing against his hip. The automatic doors slid open and he burst into the brightly lit ER. The triage nurse looked up, relief washing over her face. "Dr. Chen, OR2 is prepped and ready. The patient is being moved there now." "Status?" Michael demanded, already moving toward the surgical wing. "Coding again," the nurse said, following him. "They're shocking her now." Michael broke into a full sprint, his dress shoes slapping against the linoleum floor. He burst through the doors to the surgical wing, where a team of nurses was wheeling a gurney toward OR2. On the gurney was a small figure, her chest rising and falling with the mechanical rhythm of a ventilator. Emma Stone. Michael moved alongside the gurney, his eyes scanning the monitors. BP 70/40, heart rate 140, oxygen saturation 88%. She was dying, her body shutting down, but she was still fighting. "Get her into the OR," Michael ordered. "I'm scrubbing in now. I need a full surgical team, 2 scrub nurses, an anesthesiologist, and a perfusionist on standby in case we need to go on bypass. And I need 4 more units of O-negative blood standing by." "Yes, doctor." Michael rushed to the scrub room, stripping off his jacket and shirt. He scrubbed his hands and forearms for the full 5 minutes, the ritual calming his mind, focusing his thoughts. He could hear the activity in the OR through the window, the team moving with practiced efficiency, prepping the patient, setting up the instruments. He dried his hands, then stepped into the OR, where a nurse helped him into his surgical gown and gloves. He looked at the team assembled around the table, all people he'd worked with before, all people he trusted. "Let's bring her home," Michael said quietly. And then he got to work. The OR was a temple of controlled chaos. The lights overhead were bright and focused, casting sharp shadows across the surgical field. The monitors beeped steadily, displaying Emma's vital signs in real time. BP 75/45, heart rate 135, oxygen saturation 90%. Not great, but stable enough for Michael to work. He stood at the head of the table, scalpel in hand. His eyes focused on the entry wound just below Emma's left clavicle. The bullet had entered at a steep downward angle, traveling through the subclavian space and lodging somewhere near the great vessels of the chest. One wrong move and she'd bleed out in seconds. "Scalpel," Michael said, his voice calm and steady. The scrub nurse placed the instrument in his hand. Michael made the first incision, a clean line following the natural curve of the clavicle. Blood welled up immediately, and the nurse suctioned it away, keeping the field clear. "Retractors," Michael said. The nurse handed him the instruments, and he carefully pulled back the layers of tissue, exposing the underlying structures. The bullet had torn through muscle, fascia, and connective tissue, leaving a trail of damage in its wake. "Cautery." The nurse handed him the electrocautery device, and Michael carefully burned away the bleeding vessels, sealing them one by one. The smell of burning flesh filled the OR, but no one flinched. This was routine for a trauma surgeon. "Deeper," Michael muttered, more to himself than to the team. He dissected carefully, layer by layer, following the path of the bullet. His hands moved with practiced precision, every motion deliberate and controlled. "BP dropping," the anesthesiologist called out. 65 over 40. "Give her another unit," Michael ordered, not looking up from the surgical field. "On it." Michael continued working, his mind completely focused on the task at hand. He could feel the weight of the moment, the knowledge that this girl's life hung in the balance, that every decision he made could be the difference between life and death. But he didn't let it paralyze him. He'd been in this position hundreds of times before. This was what he'd trained for. This was what he was made for. "There," Michael said suddenly, spotting the bullet. It was lodged against the superior vena cava, the massive vein that carried deoxygenated blood from the upper body to the heart. The bullet was pressing against the vessel, compressing it, slowing the blood flow. "Hemostats," Michael said, holding out his hand. The nurse placed the clamps in his hand, and Michael carefully positioned them on either side of the bullet, applying gentle traction to the surrounding tissue. He needed to stabilize the area before attempting to remove the bullet. Suction. The nurse suctioned away the blood, giving Michael a clear view. He took a breath, steadying himself, then carefully began to dissect the tissue around the bullet. "BP 60 over 35, the anesthesiologist called out. "She's crashing." "Increase the pressors," Michael said, his voice still calm. "And push another unit of blood. Already maxed on pressors, Dr. Chen. Then prepare for CPR, but give me 30 seconds. Michael's hands moved faster now, his fingers working with surgical precision. He could feel the bullet shifting slightly as he worked, and he knew he was running out of time. 20 seconds, the anesthesiologist called out. Michael grabbed the bullet with a pair of forceps, applying gentle pressure. It shifted slightly, moving away from the vena cava. 10 seconds. Michael pulled slowly, carefully, his entire focus on the bullet. It came free with a wet, sucking sound, and immediately, blood began to pour from the wound. "Suction!" Michael barked. The nurse suctioned frantically, but the blood kept coming. Michael grabbed a piece of surgical gauze and pressed it against the wound, applying pressure. "She's coding!" the anesthesiologist shouted. "V-fib!" The monitors erupted into a cacophony of alarms. Emma's heart had stopped beating in a coordinated rhythm and was now quivering uselessly in her chest. "Charge to 200, Michael ordered, stepping back from the table. The nurse grabbed the defibrillator paddles, placing them on Emma's chest. "Clear!" Everyone stepped back. The shock delivered and Emma's body jerked on the table. The monitors beeped once, twice, then flatlined again. "Again! 300! Clear!" Another shock. Another jerk. And then, beep, 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 a heartbeat. "We've got sinus rhythm," the anesthesiologist said, relief evident in his voice. Michael stepped back to the table, his hands already moving. The bleeding had slowed, but it hadn't stopped. He needed to repair the damage to the vena cava. 6-0 Prolene suture, Michael said. The nurse handed him the suture, and Michael began to stitch, his hands moving with practiced precision. Each stitch was perfect, each movement controlled. He worked for 20 minutes, repairing the tear in the vena cava, then checking for any other sources of bleeding. Irrigation. The nurse flushed the surgical field with saline, and Michael examined every inch of the tissue, looking for any other injuries. "Looks good," he said finally. "Let's close." The nurse handed him the closing sutures, and Michael began to stitch the layers of tissue back together, working from the inside out. It took another hour, but finally, he was done. "Vitals?" Michael asked. "BP 100/60. Heart rate 95. Oxygen saturation 98%. She's stable." Michael let out a breath he didn't know he'd been holding. "Good. Let's get her to the ICU." He stepped back from the table, pulling off his gloves and gown. The team began the process of transferring Emma to a gurney, preparing to move her to the intensive care unit. Michael walked out of the OR, his body suddenly heavy with exhaustion. He'd been awake for over 24 hours, and the adrenaline was starting to wear off. But the girl was alive. Emma Stone was alive. Michael walked into the waiting room, still in his surgical scrubs, the fabric stained with Emma's blood. The room was small and cramped, with uncomfortable plastic chairs and a flickering TV in the corner playing the morning news. Officer Garrett Stone sat in one of the chairs, his head in his hands. He looked up as Michael approached, his face pale and drawn. His eyes were red from crying and his hands were shaking. "Dr. Chen," Stone said, standing up quickly. "Is she... She's alive," Michael said simply. Stone's legs gave out and he collapsed back into the chair, his entire body shaking with relief. "Thank God. Thank God." A woman rushed into the waiting room. Stone's wife, presumably. She was blonde, in her early 40s, her face streaked with tears. She looked at Michael, then at her husband, then back at Michael. "Is she..." "She's going to be okay," Michael said, his voice gentle. "The surgery was successful. We removed the bullet and repaired the damage. She'll need weeks of recovery, but she's going to be fine." Stone's wife broke down, sobbing into her hands. Stone stood up and wrapped his arms around her, both of them crying together. Michael watched them for a moment, feeling a complex mix of emotions. Anger at what Stone had done, relief that the girl had survived, and a strange, hollow satisfaction at the cosmic justice of the situation. After a moment, Stone pulled away from his wife and turned to Michael. His face was a mess, red, swollen, covered in tears and snot. He looked like a broken man. "Dr. Chen," Stone said, his voice shaking. I don't know what to say. Thank you. Thank you for saving my daughter. I know I don't deserve it. I know I don't deserve anything from you. But thank you." Michael looked at him, his expression unreadable. "I didn't save your daughter for you, Officer Stone. I saved her because she's a child, because she's innocent, because she didn't choose her father." Stone flinched at the words, but he nodded. "I understand. And I'm sorry. I'm so sorry for what I did. I was wrong. You were racist," Michael interrupted. "Let's not dance around it. You profiled me. You humiliated me. You called me boy. You denied me my rights. You delayed critical medical care because you saw a black man in an expensive car and decided I was a criminal." Stone's face crumpled. I know. And I'm sorry. I was raised in a small town where everyone looked like me. I've got no excuse. I've been a cop for 15 years and I've done things I'm not proud of, but tonight..." His voice broke. "Tonight I almost lost my daughter because of my own prejudice." "Yes, you did," Michael said coldly. "And if I hadn't been as skilled as I am, if I hadn't had the training and experience to save her, she would be dead. And it would be your fault." Stone nodded, tears streaming down his face. I know. Michael looked at him for a long moment, then sighed. "Officer Stone, I'm going to file a formal complaint with the Virginia State Police. I'm also going to file a lawsuit, not for money, but to make sure this doesn't happen to anyone else. You need to face consequences for what you did. Real consequences." "I understand," Stone whispered. "I'll cooperate fully. I'll resign. I'll do whatever it takes." Michael nodded. "Your daughter is in the ICU. She's sedated and on a ventilator, but her vitals are stable. She'll probably be awake in a few hours. You can see her then." Stone looked up, his eyes desperate. Can I see her now? Just for a minute?" Michael hesitated, then nodded. "Follow me." He led Stone and his wife through the hospital, up to the ICU on the 4th floor. Emma was in a private room, surrounded by monitors and machines. She looked small and fragile in the hospital bed, her chest rising and falling with the rhythm of the ventilator. Stone walked to her bedside, his hand reaching out to touch hers. He stood there for a long moment, just looking at her, his shoulders shaking with silent sobs. "She's beautiful," Stone's wife whispered. "She's so beautiful." Michael stood in the doorway, watching. He thought about all the times he'd seen families in this position, standing at the bedside of a loved one, grateful for another chance, another day. He thought about the fragility of life, the way it could be snuffed out in an instant by a bullet, a car crash, a moment of violence. And he thought about the power he held in his hands, the power to save lives, to give people second chances, to be the difference between life and death. It was a heavy burden, but it was one he'd chosen willingly. After a few minutes, Michael cleared his throat. "You should go. She needs rest, and so do you." Stone nodded, reluctantly pulling his hand away from Emma's. "Thank you, Dr. Chen. I'll never forget what you did." Michael didn't respond. He just watched as Stone and his wife left the room, then turned back to Emma. He checked her vitals one more time, making sure everything was stable, then walked out of the ICU, his body finally giving in to the exhaustion. He found Sarah and James in the doctor's lounge, both of them looking as tired as he felt. "How's the patient?" Sarah asked. "Stable," Michael said, collapsing into a chair. "She's going to make it." Sarah smiled, relief washing over her face. "You're a miracle worker, Michael Chen." "I'm just a surgeon," Michael said quietly. "I did my job." James leaned forward, his expression serious. "Mike, what you did tonight, saving that man's daughter after what he did to you, that takes a kind of strength most people don't have." Michael shrugged. "I didn't do it for him. I did it for her." "I know," James said, "but still, you're a better man than I am. I don't know if I could have done the same thing." Michael looked at him, then at Sarah. "We all have a choice, every day, about what kind of people we want to be. Stone made his choice tonight. He chose hate. He chose prejudice. But I chose to save his daughter anyway, because that's who I am. That's the man I want to be." Sarah reached over and squeezed his hand. "And that's why we love you, Michael." They sat in silence for a moment, the weight of the night settling over them. Then Sarah's phone buzzed. She looked at the screen, her eyes widening. "Michael, you need to see this." She turned the phone toward him, showing a news article that had just been published. The headline read, "Racist Cop Arrests Black Surgeon Rushing to Save His Daughter's Life." Michael's stomach dropped. "How?" "One of the nurses overheard Stone in the waiting room," Sarah explained. "She told a reporter friend. The story broke an hour ago, and it's already going viral." Michael scrolled through the article, his jaw tightening. It detailed everything: the traffic stop, the arrest, the delay, the surgery. It even included Stone's name and photo. "This is going to blow up," James said grimly. "The media is going to be all over this." Michael set the phone down, rubbing his eyes. "I didn't want this. I just wanted to save the girl." "I know," Sarah said gently, "but the world needs to know what happened. People need to see that this kind of racism still exists, even when it costs lives." Michael nodded slowly. "I guess you're right." His phone buzzed, then again, and again. Within minutes, he had dozens of missed calls and text messages, reporters, colleagues, friends, all wanting to talk about what had happened. Michael turned off his phone, setting it on the table. "I need to sleep. We can deal with this later." "Good idea," James said, standing up. "Come on, I'll drive you home." Michael nodded, standing up slowly. His body ached, his mind was foggy with exhaustion, but he felt a strange sense of peace. He'd done the right thing. He'd saved a life. And no matter what happened next, no one could take that away from him. Michael woke up 12 hours later to the sound of his phone ringing. He'd forgotten to turn off the ringer before collapsing into bed, and now the insistent buzzing was dragging him back to consciousness. He grabbed the phone, squinting at the screen. It was Sarah. "Hello?" he mumbled, his voice thick with sleep. "Michael, turn on the TV, Channel 7, now." Michael fumbled for the remote, turning on the small television in his bedroom. The local news was playing, and the headline at the bottom of the screen made his stomach drop. Viral video shows racist police officer arresting surgeon rushing to save his daughter. The video was from a dash cam, presumably Stone's patrol car. It showed the entire traffic stop, from the moment Michael was pulled over to the moment he was shoved into the back of the cruiser. The audio was crystal clear, capturing every word of their exchange. Michael watched as Stone called him boy. He watched as he begged to be let go, explaining that a child was dying. He watched as Stone laughed, mocking him, enjoying the power he held. And then the video cut to the station, showing Michael handcuffed in the cell, Stone taunting him through the bars. The news anchor's voice narrated over the footage. This shocking video, obtained through a Freedom of Information Act request, shows Virginia State Police Officer Garrett Stone arresting Dr. Michael Chen, a decorated Army veteran and trauma surgeon, while Dr. Chen was rushing to perform emergency surgery on a 14-year-old gunshot victim. What Officer Stone didn't know at the time was that the victim was his own daughter. The screen cut to an interview with Sarah, recorded that morning at the hospital. "Dr. Chen is one of the finest surgeons I've ever worked with," Sarah said, her voice firm. "He's saved hundreds of lives over the course of his career. Last night, he was unlawfully detained, humiliated, and denied his constitutional rights, all while a child was dying. The fact that he still went into that OR and saved Officer Stone's daughter speaks to his character. He's a hero in every sense of the word." The screen cut back to the news anchor. "Officer Stone has been placed on administrative leave pending an investigation. The Virginia State Police have issued a statement condemning his actions and promising a thorough review of their procedures. Dr. Chen has filed both a formal complaint and a federal civil rights lawsuit." Michael's phone rang again. This time it was James. "You seeing this?" James asked. "Yeah," Michael said, his voice flat. "It's everywhere, Mike. CNN, Fox, MSNBC. Every major network is covering it. The video has 10 million views on YouTube already. You're going viral." Michael rubbed his face, feeling the weight of the situation settling on his shoulders. "I didn't want this, James. I just wanted to do my job." "I know, but this is bigger than you now. This is about accountability. This is about making sure what happened to you doesn't happen to anyone else." Michael sighed. "What do I do?" "You tell your story," James said. "The media wants to talk to you. Let them. Use this platform to make a difference." Michael thought about it for a moment, then nodded. "Okay, set up some interviews. But I'm not doing this for me. I'm doing it for everyone who's been profiled, harassed, or worse." "I know you are, Mike. That's why people are going to listen." Over the next 48 hours, Michael gave a dozen interviews. He appeared on morning shows, news programs, and podcasts. He told his story, calmly, factually, without embellishment, and let the facts speak for themselves. "I'm one of the lucky ones," he said in an interview with CNN. "I had witnesses. I had video evidence. I had people who believed me and fought for me. But every day, people who look like me are profiled, harassed, and treated as criminals just for existing. And most of them don't have the advantages I had. If this incident shines a light on that reality, if it creates a conversation that leads to change, then maybe something good can come from it." The public response was overwhelming. Support poured in from across the country. Fellow doctors, military veterans, civil rights activists, and ordinary people who were outraged by what had happened. But there was also backlash. Stone had his defenders, people who claimed Michael was exaggerating, that Stone was just doing his job, that this was all being blown out of proportion. Michael ignored the hate. He focused on the positive, on the people who were inspired by his story, who saw themselves in him, who felt empowered to speak up about their own experiences. 2 weeks after the incident, the Virginia Attorney General announced that Officer Garrett Stone would face criminal charges: deprivation of rights under color of law, unlawful detention, and obstruction of medical care. If convicted, he could face up to 10 years in prison. Stone's lawyer immediately began plea negotiations, offering a full confession and cooperation in exchange for a reduced sentence. Michael was asked if he would accept a plea deal. He thought about it for a long time, then made his decision. "I'll accept a plea deal under one condition," Michael told the prosecutor. "Stone has to publicly apologize, not just to me, but to everyone he's ever profiled or mistreated. He has to acknowledge what he did and commit to being better. And he has to work with organizations that combat police brutality, sharing his story as a cautionary tale." The prosecutor agreed to present the terms to Stone's lawyer. A week later, Michael received a call. Stone had accepted. The public apology took place at a press conference at the Virginia State Capitol. Stone stood at a podium, flanked by his lawyer and the Attorney General, his face pale and drawn. "My name is Garrett Stone," he began, his voice shaking, "and I'm a racist." The room fell silent. "For 15 years, I've been a police officer. And for 15 years, I've used my badge to profile, harass, and humiliate people of color. I told myself I was just doing my job, that I was keeping people safe. But the truth is, I was abusing my power. I was treating people as less than human because of the color of their skin." Stone paused, taking a shaky breath. "2 weeks ago, I pulled over Dr. Michael Chen, a black man driving an expensive car. I didn't see a doctor. I didn't see a decorated veteran. I didn't see a man rushing to save a life. I saw a stereotype. I saw a criminal. And I treated him accordingly." Stone's voice cracked. "What I didn't know was that the life Dr. Chen was rushing to save was my daughter's. My 14-year-old daughter, Emma, had been shot. She was dying. And I almost cost her her life because of my prejudice." Stone looked directly at the camera. "Dr. Chen, I'm sorry. I'm sorry for what I did to you. I'm sorry for the way I treated you. You saved my daughter's life, even after I humiliated you, arrested you, and denied you your rights. You're a better man than I am, and I will spend the rest of my life trying to be worthy of the second chance you gave my family." He paused again, wiping his eyes. "To everyone else I've mistreated over the years, and I know there are many of you, I'm sorry. I was wrong. I used my badge to hurt people instead of help them. I let hate and fear guide my actions, and I'm committed to doing better. I'm working with the Southern Poverty Law Center to educate other officers about implicit bias and racial profiling. I'm telling my story so that other cops can see the consequences of their actions. I'm trying to make amends." Stone stepped back from the podium, his head bowed. The Attorney General stepped forward. "As part of his plea agreement, Mr. Stone has agreed to a sentence of 18 months in prison, followed by 5 years of probation. He will also be permanently barred from working in law enforcement. Additionally, he will donate the entirety of his pension to organizations that support victims of police brutality." The press conference ended, and the media erupted with questions. But Michael, watching from home, felt a sense of closure. Stone had faced consequences, real consequences, and maybe, just maybe, his story would prevent someone else from making the same mistakes. 6 months later, Michael received a letter. It was handwritten on lined notebook paper, the penmanship shaky but sincere. "Dear Dr. Chen, my name is Emma Stone. I'm the girl you saved. I've been wanting to write to you for a long time, but I didn't know what to say. How do you thank someone for saving your life? How do you apologize for what your father did? I found out about everything a few weeks after I woke up. My parents tried to protect me from it, but I saw the news. I saw the video. I saw what my dad did to you. I was horrified. I was ashamed. I couldn't believe that the man I'd looked up to my whole life could be so cruel, so hateful. But then I learned that you still saved me. Even after what he did, you still came to the hospital. You still performed the surgery. You still gave me a second chance at life. I don't understand how you did that. I don't know if I could have done the same thing in your position, but I'm so grateful that you did. Because of you, I'm alive. Because of you, I got to celebrate my 15th birthday. Because of you, I got to go back to school to see my friends, to play volleyball again. Because of you, I have a future. And I want you to know that I'm not going to waste it. I've decided to become a doctor, just like you. I want to save lives. I want to help people. I want to be the kind of person who sees past hate and prejudice and does the right thing, even when it's hard. My dad is different now. He's in prison, but he's trying to change. He's reading books about racism and bias. He's working with counselors. He's trying to become a better person. I don't know if he'll ever fully make up for what he did, but I think the fact that he's trying, that he's acknowledging his mistakes and working to fix them, that's something. Thank you, Dr. Chen. Thank you for saving my life. Thank you for being a hero. Thank you for showing me what true strength looks like. I promise I'll make you proud. Sincerely, Emma Stone. Michael folded the letter carefully and placed it in his desk drawer, next to his Army commendations, his medical degrees, and the dozens of thank you notes he'd received over the years. He thought about Emma, a 14-year-old girl who'd been given a second chance at life, who was now determined to use that chance to make a difference. He thought about Stone, a broken man trying to rebuild himself, trying to make amends for the harm he'd caused. And he thought about himself, a surgeon, a veteran, a man who'd faced discrimination and hate, but had refused to let it change who he was. The story had gone viral, sparking a national conversation about police brutality, racial profiling, and accountability. It had led to policy changes, training reforms, and a renewed focus on civil rights. But for Michael, the most important part wasn't the headlines or the interviews or the accolades. It was the letter from Emma. Because at the end of the day, that's what it was all about. Saving lives, giving people second chances, and inspiring the next generation to be better than the one before. Michael returned to his work at Richmond Memorial Hospital. He continued to operate, to teach, to save lives. He didn't seek fame or recognition. He didn't dwell on what had happened that night. He simply showed up, day after day, and did the work. Because that's what heroes do. They don't wait for applause. They don't demand gratitude. They see someone in need, and they act. Even when the world tells them not to. Even when the cost is high. Even when the person they're saving doesn't deserve it. Because mercy isn't something you earn. It's something you give. And Dr. Michael Chen, he gave it freely. Emma Stone stood at the podium in the auditorium at Johns Hopkins University, her white coat crisp and new, her stethoscope hanging around her neck. She was 19 years old, a sophomore in college, and she'd just been accepted into the university's accelerated medical program. When I was 14, Emma began, her voice steady and clear, I was shot in a convenience store robbery. I was dying. And the only reason I'm standing here today is because of a man named Dr. Michael Chen. The audience listened in rapt attention as Emma told her story. Not just the medical details, but the full context. Her father's racism, the traffic stop, the arrest, the surgery. Dr. Chen didn't have to save my life, Emma said, her voice thick with emotion. After what my father did to him, no one would have blamed him if he'd walked away. But he didn't. He chose mercy. He chose compassion. He chose to be better than the hate that had been directed at him. Emma paused, looking out at the sea of faces. That's the kind of doctor I want to be. That's the kind of person I want to be. Someone who sees past prejudice, past hate, past all the barriers we put up between each other. Someone who looks at a patient and sees a human being, not a statistic or a stereotype. She held up a photo, a picture of herself and Michael taken at her high school graduation. He'd been invited as a guest of honor, and they'd taken the photo together, both of them smiling. "Dr. Chen is my hero," Emma said quietly, "and I'm going to spend the rest of my life trying to be worthy of the gift he gave me. Not just the gift of life, but the gift of showing me what true strength looks like." The auditorium erupted in applause. Emma stepped down from the podium, her heart full. She was going to be a doctor. She was going to save lives. And she was going to make Dr. Michael Chen proud. Meanwhile, in a small community center in Richmond, Virginia, Garrett Stone stood in front of a group of teenagers, at-risk kids from troubled backgrounds, many of them dealing with the same kind of prejudice and discrimination he'd once inflicted on others. "My name is Garrett Stone," he said, his voice quiet. "And I used to be a police officer. I used to be a racist. And I almost cost my daughter her life because of it." The kids listened, some skeptical, some curious. "I'm not here to ask for forgiveness," Stone continued. "I'm here to tell you my story, to show you what hate does, to show you the consequences of prejudice, and to tell you that it's never too late to change." He told them about that night, the traffic stop, the arrest, the humiliation. He told them about Michael Chen, the man he'd wronged, the man who'd saved his daughter anyway. "Dr. Chen taught me something I should have learned a long time ago," Stone said, "that every person deserves dignity. Every person deserves respect, no matter the color of their skin, the car they drive, or the neighborhood they come from." He paused, looking at the kids. "I'm not proud of who I was, but I'm working every day to be better. And I'm here to tell you, all of you, that you're better than the hate. You're better than the stereotypes. You're better than the system that tries to tell you you're less than." Stone finished his talk and the kids clapped, not loudly but sincerely. After the session, a young black teenager approached him, his expression wary. "Mr. Stone," the kid said, "do you really think people can change?" Stone looked at him, his eyes sincere. "I have to believe they can. Because if I don't, then what was the point of all this suffering? What was the point of almost losing my daughter? I have to believe that people can learn, can grow, can be better. And I have to prove it every day by being better myself." The kid nodded slowly. "All right, I'll give you that." As the kid walked away, Stone felt a small flicker of hope. Maybe he couldn't undo the harm he'd caused. Maybe he couldn't take back the years of prejudice and hate. But he could use his story to prevent others from making the same mistakes. And that was something. And Dr. Michael Chen? He was in the OR, where he belonged, his hands steady, his mind focused, saving another life. Because that's what he did. That's who he was. A healer. A warrior. A man who believed in mercy, even when the world said he shouldn't. And as he worked, he thought about Emma, the girl he'd saved, the future doctor, the living proof that one act of compassion could change the world. He thought about Stone, the broken man, trying to rebuild, trying to atone. And he thought about all the lives he'd touched, all the people he'd saved, all the second chances he'd given. It wasn't easy. It was never easy. But it was worth it. Every single time. What would you have done in Dr. Chen's position? Would you have still saved the daughter of the man who arrested you, humiliated you, and nearly cost an innocent child her life? Or would you have walked away? Subscribe to Obsidian Files for more.